thought apprenticeship was a tremendous experience, and I would recommend it. As a matter of fact, I built a new organization that recommends that very thing. It's called Venture for America. But great question, though. Thank you. Another plant. I've got plants everywhere. Other questions? Yes?
Related to the first question, can you talk about how you thought about what type of money you were looking to raise in terms of angel versus institutional versus, how do you think that process was opportunistic?
Other excellent question. There's an aphorism as to who you raise money from. It's friends, family, and fools. You guys heard this one? It's totally true, though. It was a for-profit business that we were developing. And people in this room probably think to themselves, venture capitalists. The truth is that venture capitalists fund probably max 1% to 2% of startup businesses. And even when they do fund a business, they expect 4 out of 5 of you to fail, and then the 1 out of 5 to be such a big deal that it makes up for the rest. So, for us, when we raise money, we just try to find people that that would believe in us and that would have the resources that they wouldn't, we wouldn't be sending anyone to the poorhouse. So I would lean much more towards the opportunistic side myself. I mean, people think, rich uncle equals like something bad or whatnot. I mean, you have to use whatever you have. So if you have a rich uncle, that person should be someone you call. Seriously. Better if the rich uncle is someone, you can pretend he's not your uncle. I mean, that's cool too. But, but yeah, it's how most of these businesses get started, or social enterprises. Other questions? All right, so now I'm going to go macro. This is Venture for America. So for those of you who are in college, this is somewhat relevant. I hope it's very relevant. We will see. So, so this is a presentation that goes to college students, and it's almost entirely overlapping with stuff that really everyone sees, including donors and anyone else. All right. So for those of you who are undergraduates, what do you guys want in a first job? Just someone, name a criterion or something. Yeah. Some kind of real responsibility. I like it. What's your name? Sarah. So Sarah says some sort of real responsibility, but a lot of you agree with that. What else? Yeah.
Skills.
Yeah, develop skills. I think that's number 1. Develop skills, training, hit the ground running. It's like Family Feud, but lame. And anyone else on this list? All right. So
money.
Sorry?
Well, money.
Money's on the list. Yes, it is. Yeah. So money's here. Number 2, we put looks good on resume, keeps options open, in case you don't like it or want to move on, et cetera, et cetera. We understand. It's all right. Work with other smart people like that. Ideally, some real responsibility instead of some sort of functional work. Money. And then also for this crowd, this is very relevant. Something good. You might want to do something good. For some people, they think they'll return to doing good after they become ballers. It's like, I'll save it for my post-baller stage. Right? All right, so this is like something of the list. Now, this is what we see as the problem, and I'll speak to this in more detail. It's that right now in the country, there's a hyper-concentration of intellectual capital to professional services, that is finance, law, and consulting, and not enough intellectual horsepower going to job-creating enterprises in most of the country. What is something that the country has historically been great at, which is identifying very smart people and then training them and then having them go on to positions of substance, has now become a bit of a weakness because of various structural factors. So this may be controversial to some of you. I see some of you nodding. We'll go into it a little bit. All right, so I'm going to start the story across the river at Harvard. Harvard class of 2011. So this data is mostly publicly available. It's all publicly available, actually. So what do you guys think are the 3 most popular things that Harvard grads did this past May?
Investment banking.
Finance, yes. Consulting, what else?
Law.
Law, yes, all right. All right, so what percentage of people do you think did those 3 things?
2/3.
70?
Wow. Well, you guys are even darker than I am. So the real number is about 50%, to the extent that you can ID this stuff. So you have about half the class going to professional services. So what's number 4 on this list?
Unemployed.
Consumer products.
Unemployed would equal grad school or law school. So what's number 4 on this list?
That's
Med school, that's right. All right, so at this point now we have 2/3 of the class. And then we have this potpourri category that is grad school, nonprofits, industry, that's any company, big or small. That could be Procter & Gamble down to a 2-person startup, government, IT, military. So that, you can sort of, we did that in generally descending order, so you're looking at maybe 7 or 8% to industry. Then someone yelled out teaching, which if you said Teach for America, and I know Helen is a former core member. So Teach for America, 18% of Harvard seniors applied, with 4% actually becoming core members. So that's 66 of the class. And then this last segment is 10% undecided. So you could bring all of these percentages up a little bit. All right, so thoughts about this, reactions? Anyone? I mean, some people are like, Teach for America, is that large? I think so. I think Leah, you might have said something about that. John?
nobody went into a startup?
Well, startup would go in under industry. So if you went to a startup, it would be a company. Other thoughts on this? Yes.
How many actually started a company?
It's pretty, yeah, it's pretty non-diverse. Agreed. Sorry, there's, yeah.
Nobody started their own company?
Yeah, a startup would be under industry, which is maybe 7 or 8%, but it's a pretty small subset. You can see. I mean, it's despite the social network or whatnot. I mean, most of these kids are not like. There's another question. Yeah.
How does this compare with other colleges in America? Is this pretty typical?
You are my third ringer, so let's go to other colleges. All right, so if you look at other top schools, the same stats essentially play out anywhere you can get data. So you can see that the top employers out of most of these schools are consulting firms and investment banks, with only a couple of exceptions. Teach for America is on the list in some cases. Teach for America is actually the #1 employer out of Yale, Duke, Dartmouth, Georgetown, a bunch of top schools. But you can see the stats are fairly similar. And I've done this presentation at a number of top schools, and they all say, yes, this is exactly what we are doing. They all understand this picture quite well. All right, so let's think about what this, oh, sorry about that. Stephen, thought?
What percentage of students in college, there are about like 18, 19 million students in programs throughout the U.S., 4,000 colleges or so. What percentage of students does that represent? Is that, this is like a data point of 1 almost, right?
Oh, this set of stats essentially applies to all of the top 30 national universities. Yeah. So if you have about 50% of your graduates of these schools becoming bankers, consultants, and lawyers, where are they going to live? Where are these activities concentrated?
New York,
Yeah, so there are four cities we listed here. So New York's one,
San Francisco,
Boston's another, DC is another,
San Fran.
San Francisco, right. So those are the 4. So you end up with 4 cities that end up absorbing higher than normal concentration of talent. And then, so what we did is we looked at the unemployment issue across the country, and you can see that the areas are essentially non-overlapping, where the national university system has become a de facto talent drain on most of the country, where if you were a smart kid who grew up in Detroit and went to Harvard or Duke or one of these schools, you're probably going to become a management consultant or banker in New York or DC or Boston, and you're not going to go back to Detroit, you're not going to start a company, you're not going to build a business. It's true for most of the country. And we think that these trends actually contribute to what we all see as the national employment picture. Question?
Which way is the trend going in terms of the number of students that are going into the finance and consulting industries?
The numbers are essentially constant over the last 5 or 6 years, and it's something that, it's actually been going on for more than that, it's more like a decade or 2. But the reason is that even if you're an investment bank that's firing lots of people, as some of them are, you still need lots of junior hires. You love them because they're relatively inexpensive, and you can work them really hard for a couple of years, and then most of them you can actually get rid of after the analyst program anyway. So you're going to be hiring all the time if you're one of these firms. Yeah?
What's the average time that these students will stay at a consulting or banking job?
The attrition rate from the top consulting firms is something like 30% a year, so the average tenure is about 3 years. Investment banks, it's something similar. Yeah?
And where do they go after that?
It's all over the map, but it's something we can like the statistics aren't clear on that because banks don't keep track of that stuff. But we have some ideas. I mean, I see a lot of the stuff in New York. All right, so this is the picture as it currently exists. You know, most people upon seeing it actually reflect and say, yeah, that actually makes a whole lot of sense because I go to MIT and all of my friends, if they're not going to work for this, they're going to become a banker or a consultant. Is that right? How many of you guys are seniors at MIT or whatnot? I mean, all right, so this is the picture. Now, why is it that this is happening? Why is it that everyone's becoming a banker, consultant, or going to law school? It's analogous to the first slide. How is it that smart kids choose what to do after college? So we had money, we had gained skills, but the first two, we think, are that it's prestigious and that it's clearly marked and easy to find or apply to. Most freshmen in college have no idea what management consulting is. But by the time they're seniors, they all know what it is. And that's because these firms spend millions of dollars on recruitment infrastructures to make sure that at every national university, you know what Bain is, you know what BCG is. I was in a cab from the airport at JFK with a woman who was just finishing her PhD in biology at Harvard across the way. And she said that exactly 2 firms recruited from their PhD program at Harvard in biology. And those 2 firms were McKinsey and BCG. They were not universities, they were not drug companies. And she said the exact same thing, is that none of them had any clue what management consulting was when they started their PhD in biology. But by the end, they were all like, are you going to McKinsey or BCG? I mean, that was like the conversation they were having. So these firms know where their bread is buttered. Some of you are laughing, but you know it's true. I mean, you guys are. All right, so the decision rules that smart kids are using look something like this. It's prestigious, it looks good in your resume, it's a clearly marked path, it's easy to find or apply to. It gets you stature in the next level, it opens doors and keeps your options open so you're not really committing to anything. There's compensation involved, you gain skills, train for the next thing, you make sure you don't fall behind your peers, you work with other smart people. And then for some of you, again in this room, potentially relevant, something good / pro-social like Teach for America. So those of you who are college students, what do you guys think of this set of factors? Is this more or less true? Yeah, and you know, it's no, you know, I mean, it's very reasonable. These firms are very rational. They encourage you to be rational, and this is where rationality leads systemically. All right, so how many of you guys have an interest in starting your own company or working for a startup at some point? A lot of you. Now, why is it that you're not going to do that when you graduate? I mean, I'm trying to put this out there. Like, what are the factors that would make it hard for you? Yes, so finance and debt, money is one. What other factors are there? Network, yeah, that's there too. You don't know anyone that's doing this necessarily.
Every reason you put up there, lacking.
It's the opposite of the last slide. Is what do you say? What's your name? William. So William says it's just the opposite of the last slide. And it is in large part. William's right. So one is that you're not recruited. These firms are not coming to you saying, hey, we want you. The reason being that they don't have the resources, they don't have the infrastructure, and they don't need 20 of you. They only need like 2 of you. So they're not going to come to campus and knock down your door. This is a big deal because most college students are not sophisticated enough to hustle and network for opportunities. They see who comes on campus and wants them. And startups are not going to do this. 2 is that it's hard to find one even if you decided to try and hunt one down because there's no real structured path. Whereas everyone knows how to apply to law school. The 3rd thing is that you're doing it on your own. The 4th is that it's high risk. You don't know if you're going to get any training. You don't know if it's going to succeed. You don't know if you're going to go anywhere. And the 5th thing is that you don't think you bring anything to the table because you don't have a network. You might not have an idea. You don't have any money. You might not be a techie. And so this is where you are. And so the reasonable thing at this point is to say, you know what? I need to go get some training somewhere. And that's going to be a banker consulting firm or law school. However, a lot of you want to go into a startup, and you all think and talk about it. And a lot of people go into banking and consulting to quote unquote learn about business so that they can then start something. And some people are nodding at that. And that's pretty universal, right? Now, some of you in this audience I know are former bankers and consultants. So raise your hand if I bet Steven's one. No? Yes. What's your name?
Alex.
Alex, where'd you work?
PwC.
All right, so can you describe the training and experience you had at PwC?
I was there for 4 years. They have great development programs, they have great people, and they have great resources. So they pay for me to do a grad school here in accounting. I have an English background, so that was amazing to me. And I went for precisely those reasons. Great training, great people, great opportunities. Yeah, great place to
Yes, so what are you doing now? Are you still there?
I left to join a startup.
Well done. All right, so one of the things that I get asked a fair amount is like, hey, Andrew, you've done some cool stuff at this point. How much did law school help you? This despite the fact that I was a corporate attorney for all of 5 months before leaving. What I presented to them is like, look, there are a few things that happen in law school. There's the actual intellectual training, which clearly has had some impact on my wiring and has probably informed other things I've done. And then there's the socialization, and then there's the debt. And the debt and the socialization are tied together. If you could somehow get the training without the socialization and the debt, then I'd actually be pretty into it. But I've seen the socialization and debt have much more profound effects than people would think going in. And I've seen that be the case in other professional service environments as well. If you could somehow get the valuation training or the consulting training without the socialization, then it would be, to me, a much clearer call. But in the world we live in, it's actually a bit less clear because you end up becoming very